So we found out a lot of, well, I kind of felt it last time, but there's a lot of Bible references and a lot of, well, I guess just we'll just say Bible references. We'll just leave it at that, and then we'll move on. Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on the video. This is my review for Lovecraft Country. This is season 1. This is episode 2. Like I said, a lot of Bible references. Um, and what I was going to say in my opening was a lot of devil worship situations as well. But when I said Bible references, that kind of cleared that up because anywhere that you have the Bible, you have Jesus and you have the devil. So it's always the battle of good and evil, and that's the thing that draws me in. But they really are all into it and picking things apart, and I'm like, okay, we got a whole lot going on, child. They talking about the KKK, they talking about the Illuminati, that everything. I'm like, okay. Now, this is my thing. The first part of the show made me actually say, wait a minute, James. Do you really want to review this or do you just want to watch this? And y'all know that's a dangerous place for me to be. Um, when I'm looking at a show and I think I'm a pretty wise person, but it ends up being a situation of do I feel like explaining what I saw? That's the feeling that I had. Do I feel like untangling and explaining what I saw? And I said, it's irritating, but it always is pretty rewarding at the end because even when I'm trying to untangle, there's other people who are untangling a different way, which creates a conversation. And that's the stuff that happens throughout the week, that entertains me. And that's what I'm telling you all. When I do my reviews, and I don't think I'll ever stop, no matter where I am with my channel, if I have 10 subscribers or 10,000 subscribers, that my interaction, if I ever get to a point where I can't interact, I don't feel the need to do YouTube videos anymore or reviews anymore because that's like the best part, the interaction and not the fighting, because y'all be fighting me, not that part, but the actual interaction of saying, okay, I seen it like this, and then, well, I seen it like that, and then, oh, maybe that was an aha. That's like the best part about it. Once we've gotten done doing the actual review, is what I missed and what you caught that I did. So that kind of thing. So I'm gonna keep on pushing forward, but things with this, you probably gonna see me skip around, so y'all gonna have a good time with what you think that I missed, that I probably didn't miss, but I just ain't talking about. Okay, because I'm going to say the first 20 minutes, they were spinning in such a circle and they were moving around and stuff was being thrown all over the place. And I was like, yeah, okay. So here we go. I said all that to say this. Boom. They're in the house, okay? Or what they're calling the lodge. They're in the lodge. We found out that the lodge is not even actually the original lodge. This is a duplicate of the original lodge that was built. And that's very important as we get to the end, okay? The original one actually burned down, and in that fire, Titus, who is the person that Tick is the descendant of, this white man Titus, who basically screwed probably many black women, um, slaves. They were slaves of his. They called them workers and said that he treated them very well and this, that, and the other, because it seems as though he had made families with them. Okay, but this Titus is like back in 1833. he died in this fire. Along in the fire, there was other people who perished with him as well, who were basically were what I get members of this here group. Okay, and the group is kind of like an Illuminati type of group, but basically what I got, they're basically occult. Okay, they're basically occult. And they basically perished in the fire. Okay, this is what I got. I said, okay, and that's the short of it. In this time, we see our folks, Tick and Letty and Uncle George. Uncle George and Letty have been hit by some type of a spell that was actually put on by Miss Christina Braithwhite, okay, which is the white woman that we saw in the car. Okay, so it's her and her father. Her father is running everything. He's basically at the head of whatever this little group that is doing all of this stuff that's going on. He's basically the one running things. And she basically, he has a daughter and not a son. Okay, he has a daughter and not a son. His daughter is resentful at the fact that she's not a son and she's not treated as a son because only men are allowed to the rituals and all of this stuff. This is all the stuff that we were like pulling, and this is out of order because we were learning this as we went on. Now, on the compound, as you go away from the house, because first of all, like I said, there was a spell put on Uncle George and Letty. They don't remember nothing that happened when they were in the woods. Tick does. Tick remembers everything. And when he's trying to talk to them, they just ain't getting it. They ain't getting it. They're like, come on. But Uncle George, we find out, is actually the smartest knife or the sharpest knife in the drawer. He definitely is. He said, we're being watched, so let's just chill. You know, when they got there, they were having a good time. They had all the books, every type of book that he likes, all the subjects he likes. They had, for Letty, they had all the kind of clothes that she wanted. And everything was just in her size, just perfect fits. And I said to myself, now, I don't know what y'all thinking about, but that is the devil, honey. Anytime you go somewhere and everything is just perfect and no reason, don't nobody know you, you ain't talk to nobody, you just go and you find this weird old house in the middle of nowhere and everything in there just makes you so happy. If you think that Lucifer ain't tied into that mess some kind of way, and child, you better get out of here, honey. Listen, that screamed devil, honey. I said, listen, it don't happen like that. The God I serve, honey, he makes you work for everything. He don't just hand you anything. He makes you work for everything, and there's always choices to be made. There is never a time you just walk in and everything is just peachy cake. Nope. Life is made up of testimonies and experiences, and there is no testimony or experience without a hardship or some type of a hurdle. So what I know, honey, at 48, you walk into somewhere, baby, and everything is just everything. You need all 4 of your eyes, honey. And I'm going to say 6 because I got contacts and I got glasses. I need all of them. If everything is everything James likes, I don't trust it for a minute. Anyway, but that was what was going on. So we see all this going on and found out that there definitely is a spell. There was a conversation between Christina Braithwhite and Tick. Tick ended up meeting her father. not really meeting them, but actually seeing them. They had actually told them, in the beginning, you all could walk around and everything's fine. Just make sure you're back by dinner time and all of this. And they had actually did this whole little thing where they went down into the little village and they seen this whole big stone building. And I told you, the Uncle George, and I just figured out that Uncle George is Courtney Vance, which is Angela Bassett's husband. That's who's playing the part. And then Christina's father, old Mr. Braithwhite, is actually Fitz from Scandal. I said, Lord have mercy, all my people, honey. So perfect matches for these characters. But anyway, that's a whole nother situation. But Uncle George said, there was some woman had these dogs, and the dogs was eating stuff, and it was like all this barking and carrying on. And that's what Uncle George, the lady was real mean. And she was like, actually, I want to punch her because she made this reference to black, what does she call them? Black monkeys or black bears. Talking about how black bears are always real meddlesome and don't mind their business, and they get caught out there and then they get tore up, and then their bodies and stuff end up in this building, and that's where the issue is. I said, so they caught it that the black bears, that's Nebby, was y'all three, honey. You three's black asses, and y'all didn't get on out of here. And they said, you got to get on out of here and get on back up to the lodge before dark. We're going to tear them up, honey. I said, okay. So when they were walking away, that's what I was like, that's where my father is. Because that's what Tick was like, we got to get my father and get out of here. And they were still saying they didn't remember, the stuff from the night before, and just kind of thinking that he was crazy. He's like, that's my father's. And they was like, yeah, all that stone, no windows. And that's when the Uncle George said, yeah, which means when you have a stone building like that, you have a basement that's more like a dungeon. You can't get out of it. And it sounds, you can't hear all that barking. He said, that's where my dad is. So they went to going back through the woods and everything. Sure enough, honey, dusk caught them. And boy, them damn things, them damn devil dogs ended up coming up out of the ground yet again and caught them out there. And Christina showed up this time on a horse. And she blew the little whistle. And they went back away. And soon as it happened, Uncle George and Letty completely forgot that happened. They said, why is we covered in dirt again? Why are we covered in dirt? And Tick is like, what the hell? That's how he realized that they were under some type of a spell. And Christina had something to do with it. Okay? So they end up going back to the house, getting ready for dinner time and everything like that. And Christina put him up on game of what was going on. When they first got up in there, they seen her dad. He's laying on the table, and he was literally having a piece of his organ cut out. And that will make sense later, because I was like, what the hell? And he was being stitched back up. I thought it was like a leech or something that was in him, but it looked like a piece of liver. Like his liver was being cut out. I was like, where's the anesthesia? Well, okay, whatever. Anyhow. So all of that had went on. So shortly after that, there was this whole situation. Like I said, she talked about the spell. Then there was this babble about Adam and Eve. Okay? Adam and Eve, and basically how it's this whole thing of bringing this peace back. That right before, because she called Eve an old meddlesome bitch. And that's what they said. It was basically like it was a utopia before Eve comes into the story. That everything was in its rightful place. all the God was in heaven and the creatures were where they were supposed to be, and all of that. Like everything in the world, everything you see and hear, everything, the stories they all exist, but everything was in its place and it was a utopia. And then when Eve came along, she fucked everything up with her old meddlesome ass. I said, oh, Miss Thing, no. Honey, no, no. But okay, whatever. So this is the whole thing. Her father's trying to take everything back to the utopia to the time before Eve. Okay, so instead of before Christ, before Eve, I said, oh, y'all really crazy. Okay, cool. So goes into that. Tick tells her, and that's what they said. He said, she told him, all white people are not against you. Some are, but all white people are not against you. You have to open up and sometimes let somebody be a friend. He says, that's fine, then let's be friends, friend. You know? And so she said, you notice that they think that you're crazy. Your uncle and your little girlfriend, they think you crazy. Because Letty was asking, did something happen to him? Was there some shell shock or something? What are you talking about, creatures and monsters and all that? Because they don't remember. I was like, a mess. So he told her, well, do this for me, friend. If everything is so cool like you say it is, then you need to give something. Take that spell off of them. She's like, you don't want me to do that? He's like, yeah, take the spell off of him. So she did just that. She took the spell off. He went into his room. They were standing outside his room door. And they were talking about something about dinner and all of this. Sits there. She said, fine. It's gone. I said, what in the goddamn witchcraft is she got going on? You hear them start screaming. Because now they're in a panic. They're in their rooms. They're in a panic. He goes to want to try to run to where they are. And you see like this invisible force field locking him into the room. So at this point, she's like, the spell's been taken off. And that's that. So they go in. Now they're playing with their heads, is what they do. It's being done as a means of entertainment. You see the group, the cult, they're all gathered and they're basically able to see, like it's like a cocktail party and they're looking through the doors and watching what's going on in the rooms with them as they're playing with their minds, basically. Here, Letty ends up going back to this whole situation. Right before any of that happened, her and Tick had a conversation where she told him about her mama and how her mom used to leave her alone and always said she was going to church, but she knew she wasn't going to church. She was lying, and that she would be afraid and stuff. And he had told her, I'll never abandon you. I'll never abandon you. So they had that little moment, okay, right there. So I'm laughing. I said, they having their little thing where they falling in love. We've been waiting for that. Then at the same time, I knew we couldn't trust Christina because Christina, when she locked them in the rooms, right before the stuff with them, the mind game started, that whore ended up running out to the barn. They called her to come out to the barn. She got to the barn, and one of them creatures, the little devil dogs, were being birthed from a cow. I said, see, y'all got some mess going on. And that's what they asked her, you ever done this before, Miss Christina? And she's like, this is my first one. Up to her hugging that nasty looking thing. I said, of course she ain't right. And that ain't the right friend to make Tick. But anyway, so we go back. Now they're going to play these little games. They play these games with them, honey. Trying to frazzle them. Uncle George was in there. Now he's having this whole thing with this lover of his. It was a woman who was the lover, and he said, you're dead. And this was a big part. This was like, I said, What's this got to do with anything? And I knew it wasn't his wife. I was like, what is this? Yeah, I didn't know who this woman was, but it was like weird. And then she was saying something to him, and he said she was dead. And she said, well, just come with me anyway. And they were having this little banter and everything. She asked him to dance, and she told him something about he could come and see his children. He'd be able to see his children, and said he used to want to fly, and he'd be able to fly and fly with his children, and something or other. And then she made reference to something about how would all of that end up being, how could it actually be so. And she said something about the building, something about a building, something about, no, she said about, it was a book. He was reading a book and a story, and he said something about the story. How does the story go with the book he was reading? Something in the book, and the ending was that the building crumbled on top of the people. It was like a love story, but at the end, the building crumbled on top of the people, and the lovers were together again. And I was like, so I paid attention to that, because stuff just don't be just said in this. And I was like, okay, and we're gonna leave that alone. Okay, so also when they were running through the woods, Letty had actually had like a deja vu. It was like a deja vu. And she was saying something about, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't Letty. It was Uncle George was saying something about his mother. And when said that she talked about an ancestor of hers running through woods or something. Like she was pregnant and running through woods. I think the woman was pregnant with the mother and running through the woods, escaping a slave master. So that would have been like Tick's, not his mother, but maybe his grandmother, or maybe his great-grandmother. But it was the person of his lineage who was a slave who escaped a fire and was running through woods, through wooded area. And it was the part of an area where this is right before they got attacked by the dogs again. They were like in the middle of nowhere. And they were saying that she was running through, and she was actually pregnant at the time. And that's how she escaped slavery. She had gotten out. There was some type of a fire in the place where she was, and she escaped, through after the fire, and she came through the woods. It was like a real scary woods or whatever. That was a person in Tick's life. So, okay, anyway, moving on. So that was that whole thing with Uncle George going through his thing. Same time, Letty is actually having a tussle with Tick's penis. Tick and her are in this whole little thing where they're like, that's what he told her he would never. That's what he had told her he would never abandon her. Told her all the things she wanted to hear and all that. I thought that was before that. But no, that was during that. And they was getting ready to get down. And then she was like, no, I don't want to do that. Like, why are we even going to do this? And that's when he was in this trance. And baby, his penis, she's like, no, don't do it. Don't take it out. Don't leave it alone. Like, I'm not doing it. Honey, and it was a serpent. It was a true Alabama black snake, honey. I said, oh. So she was in there fighting with his penis. That was her thing. And then Tick was in there, and he was fighting with what seemed to be some woman that he loved. And it was an Asian woman. Remember he talked to this Asian woman on the phone? And he ended up having to kill her. He kept saying, I'm not going to fight you. I'm not going to fight you. This, that, thing, and the other. And he ended up having to kill her. After all of that, when they got done with that whole little thing, he ended up telling the uncle. That's when I figured out. I said, Uncle George is actually the strongest one of all of them. Physically, he is not. He's older. Of course, Letty can run, and Tick is, strapped and all of this. But Uncle George has a mind of steel, okay? And he is like the puzzle figure outer, okay? He told me, he said, they're trying to get in our heads. And I think I got some information to help us get up out of here. This, that thing, and the other. We got to stick together and we got to get this done. And don't y'all worry about it. Don't let them crack you. And he said something happened. I got to tell you about whenever I was in the service. He told them, everything you did in the service, you had to do. You are a good person, and don't you let it get to you. And I said, oh, so I want to hear more about that. I think he ended up having to kill a woman he loved. She must have been a spy or something. But anyway, child, or a double agent or something. But anyway, he had to jack her up. He had to bust her up in that room again. He tried not to fight her, but yeah, she was dangerous. She was giving Kill Bill, honey. He had to jack her up. He had to kill her. Anyway, so all of that went on. They were just trying to crack them mentally. So the order, that's what they was calling them people. The order were watching the whole time with all this stuff. Okay, so that's that. They go to the dinner. They tell Letty, you can't come. It's only for men. And that they would have somebody to escort her. She would be, outside. She couldn't come. So that was that. William, William was the butler. He ended up, that was the other thing. Good old Christina had told Tech that William is not her boyfriend. She says, is that your boyfriend? It's not a boyfriend. He's a boy that's a friend sometimes. I said, oh, so y'all be getting down, honey. And she said, but he basically works here, honey. He ain't nobody. But William told Tech and Uncle George, okay, we're going to going down here. And they were all dressed up in their stuff, they had to be all as formal. Told them, don't mind the others. Just because some of them don't want you here doesn't mean that you don't belong here. So, like I said, all of this, Uncle George done figured out a whole bunch of stuff. So they get down there, baby, and Tech remembers back what he saw about when they seen the food, about her father laying on the table and that little piece of liver being cut out of him. He told Uncle George, don't eat that. Don't eat that. Leave that alone. And, that was a piece of Mr. Braithwhite's insides. I said, devil worship. Anyway, moving on. So, right in the midst of the dinner, here go Uncle George. Uncle George decided to jump up, baby, and he done cracked the whole case about the bylaws. He's in there reading. That messed around. They done gave him too much information. He done put things together and work. I told you he's the strong one, honey. He done figured out all the bylaws of their little cult. And Tick told him, says, so from the way things look, I got some power around here. And I demand that everybody leaves except for Mr. Braithwhite. And that's it. So they were standing there just like looking. And then he's like, that is an order. They all got up and they laughed. I said, oh, he done figured it out, honey. I said, put them all out. Old Mr. Braithwhite, honey, told him, he says, I demand you give me my father. Give me my father. And he told him, he said, they all believe in that order of the way things used to go. I don't. I'm running shit here. And he walked out and told him, I don't want to see his ass again until the ceremony. Like, I'm playing with you. Who do you think you are? You got them, but you ain't got me. Now, this is the other thing. Let me say this. And this is just dragging on. I told you, there's so much stuff that be going on. That day, Mr. Braithwhite referred to himself, because when they were talking, Tick said, so I guess you, in the midst of all this, you're God, huh? When he's talking about the natural order, he said, I guess you're God, huh? He says, no, I'm Adam. I said, oh. So that's why I knew he was totally batshit crazy. So that was that. So, of course, he's the first man, honey. So if you're the first man, you just right down there, honey. Just God and you, honey. Jesus ain't even a part of nothing yet. So there ain't no the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. It's just the Father and you. You a bad bitch. I said, oh no, honey. Come on, Adam. I don't think so. Anyway, so all right. So um Miss Braithwhite walks out. Letty, Uncle George, and Tick take off down into the. They said we gotta get up out of here. This is all just ridiculous. So they go. Said we gotta go get my dad. So they go back down to the thing, and they find their way down into that little thing in the dungeon, just like they said. And they get down there, and you can see there was a flask or whatever was there, and Uncle George was like, "This is your father's flask. This is definitely he was here." And they looking at the walls, and you could actually see where he has done worked his way just like a slave, worked his way out of there, and he is making his way leaving. He done found a way out to dig his way up, and we see him coming up through the ground. Right before they're doing all this, remember the mean lady with the dogs? She said, "See, I told you about those meddlesome black bears." I said, "Oh, honey, that's when we saw Letty. We didn't know Letty had actually made her way down till Letty took and bashed the shit out of her upside her head. What's up? Tore her ass up. Tore her up." But anyway, they found the father. He digging up out of the ground. He didn't come up. He didn't tunneled through. You see all these bugs, and he made his way out of there, baby. But he moved bricks and tunneled his way up through the ground. And then they get in the car, and they got the car, and they heading on out, baby. They get ready to roll out. And then as they're riding, you just see them just say, "Bam!" And there's that force field again. That's that invisible field. I said, Lord. And then you see the car coming up behind them. It's again that Christina, baby. That Christina's right around. I said, baby, she is some type of old sorceress, honey. But yeah, whenever you see the force field, it's her. She's somewhere. She's the one doing that. So come on, Miss Christina. But anyway, so all of that goes on. The car just crunched up. They get out the car. At that point, you find out who's really important and who ain't. Mr. Braithwhite takes and shoots Letty and kills Letty. Shot her in her gut, killed her, and then he said, "Okay, so you have to choose about the father or the uncle." And he ended up shooting Uncle George. So that was that. But then we end up seeing them. They're back at the house. Tick is like, whatever. You see Tick being bathed by these three women. He's standing up there butt naked. And they're bathing him. Honey, and old Christina's looking at him. I said, "Girl, you think you're going to get some of that, don't you? I guess you thought you was going to be Eve, honey. You better go sit down." Anyway, but her father, she tells him her father needs Tick to open the portal. And the portal basically is opening up the Garden of Eden. I said, "Oh, Lord have mercy." Okay, here we go. So, again, I mean, truly trying to take it back to the beginning. I said, okay. But then what? I mean, that was my thing. Once you get back to the Garden of Eden, then what? I guess you just stay right there, and that's it, and don't let things go no further. So there would never be anything else. And you just stay in that utopia, and then you just ward Eve away altogether, so there'd never be a woman. So it'd just be him, and he's controlling everything in the world. I said, "Oh no, honey," because again, Adam didn't really know of any power he had of actually controlling things, but really he was really there to control everything. If Eve had never came, he was controlling everything, basically. He was the hierarchy, and everything was in its place, and everything was beneath him except for God. I said, oh, he's crazy, crazy, crazy. Okay, whatever. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, this is a whole lot. So that's that. So in the midst of all this going on, then they end up going down, they're going to do this here little ritual. So they got this whole circle doing, I got the devil looking circle and all of this, and then you got the portal, and the portal's opening up, and they got Tech, and you see all of this energy and all of this, and he hollering, and as it's going on, he basically is turning into that tree of life, is what it looked like he was turning into. Like he was becoming the tree. I was like, oh. So that's what that was about. Okay. I was like, wow, okay, Tech. And right before this had happened, Christina had told him, she basically, and it was eternal life that her father wanted and all of that, and control. She told him something about power, and power is really about what you believe as far as how much power you have, and you could just cease it. When you see how much power you have, you need to just grab hold to it, and don't be afraid, just grab hold to it. I said, okay, all right, what's she saying? So while all this is going on, the whole transformation is going on, and you see him sprouting branches, is what it looked like to me, and all of this. And the father's like, yes, it's working. You just that thing and the other. Uncle Tech and Uncle George and Tech's father, they're having this little conversation. The father's a whole mess. He's still fussing, telling Tech, you don't never listen. So I told you to come because I thought you wouldn't listen and you wouldn't come. A mess. And which was the thing, because Tick didn't need to come. If Tick never came, they could never get done what they're trying to get done. Uncle George told Tick's father, you got to be nicer to him, and you got to love on him the way I loved on you. And he's like, I thought, something about him. He used to draw and stuff, and he was saying how the father used to beat him and all this. He said, you got to be nicer to Tick. And he says, why? He says, because, this stuff. He says, I don't tell me how to raise my son. And he told him he might not be yours. And he told him, he said, now just because you got a bullet in your gut, we said a long time ago that we were never going to bring that up again. So you shut your goddamn mouth, this, that, and the other. He's like, no, I have to say it because you may end up being all that he actually has. And I said, oh. And then it all kind of started to make sense. The woman in Uncle George's mental thing that they were doing, that was Tick's mother. That was Tick's mother. Tick's mother, that whore, that slept with both the brothers. Uncle George is actually Tick's daddy, not his real dad. His dad is actually his uncle, and the uncle is really his dad. I said, oh, here we go. What a mess. I said, oh, so that makes sense. That's why Tick has so much in common with the uncle and nothing in common with the dad, because the uncle is really his dad. I said, oh, Uncle George, shit. I said, okay, so that's what that whole thing is about. I don't think nobody knows that except for the two of them. And then, then we go, as he's turning into this tree of life, he's looking up and he sees this woman, and she's pregnant. This woman is pregnant, and you see all this energy, and you hear Tick is like hollering because he's basically getting ready to turn into this tree, and that's gonna be it for him basically. And he kind of just like absorbed whatever this energy was, and the energy started going a different type of way, and things weren't working the way that they were trying. He wasn't willing anymore. He wasn't willing anymore. And baby, when I tell you, the members wiped their asses out, honey. He absorbed all the power, and Mr. Braithwhite, Mr. Powerful, turned into dust. And then all the members turned into dust. And at this time, the house, you seen this fire. You seen the fire around the woman who was pregnant. And she had a book in her hand. And she's standing there, clear as day. It was his mother. Or not his mother, it was whoever the mother's mother, somebody down the line, like a second or third generation grandmother is who it was, who actually, she was the woman, this is what I got, she was the woman who actually got away in the fire the last time these bastards tried to do this. She's the one who actually escaped slavery in the fire, pregnant with what would end up being the lineage of women that Tick ended up coming from. He literally followed her. You know, he broke out and he followed her out of the house because the house was literally, just like Tick's mother said to the uncle, crumbling. The house was crumbling in on itself. And while all this was going on, and the woman, who was Tick's probably second or third generation grandma, his great grandma, led him right out of the house into the woods. And as he got out into the woods, it's like, okay. And then he seen Letty. Letty had actually got out and she was crying and she's like, Tick. And she's like, okay, come on. Because everybody basically perished in the house. And just like it did before, but last time it burned up. And then, that was in 1833. And then when they get up to the car, the dad, because, okay, that's the other thing I forgot to tell y'all. Mr. Braithwhite, or he healed. He brought Letty back to life and healed her and said that he was going to heal Uncle George as well. You know, that's how they got him to participate in all of this stuff. And that's what they were saying. He might bleed out if we move him when everything was starting to happen, when the house was starting to crumble and stuff. And they got out. So they were in the car. They got the car out, and they were back there. When they get up back there, the uncle was holding, or the father was holding Uncle George. Uncle George had passed. He had bled out, and he passed. So he was actually dead, but he doesn't even know that Uncle George is his father still. Nobody knows that but his father. So now we're down Uncle George, and we got Tick, we got Letty, and we got the father. Now, that is where this episode actually ended. This is where this ended. And yeah, this is where this ended. This whole story could have actually ended there. Like if it was just like a 2-hour movie, it would have just ended here. That'd have been it. Last week and this week, and that'd have been the end of the movie. But it's something's getting ready to happen because there's still shit in the woods. So there's still shit in the woods. I don't know. But anyway, that's where it ended at. Listen, I know this is a long review, but there was so much crap going on. So y'all go ahead and start adding in y'all's pieces. There's so much stuff that I didn't. Well, I told you things were spinning and circling. We talk about it in these comments. The stuff that I maybe missed or things that you picked up or seen differently. Let's talk about it. I told you there was a whole lot of, yeah, I think a lot of people will see things differently because it really, a lot of this probably go back to what you believe in and what you don't believe in. What's your version of what you believe creation is about? This is going to be interesting. I'll see y'all in the comments. I didn't talk long enough. It's almost 45 minutes. I'm gone. I'll see y'all next week. See you in the comments.